Good morning, dear colleagues and guests. To those who are following us online, thank you for having joined and welcome to this session, this intergroup meeting on Thursday, the 24th of October. Today we will be discussing animal transports and the recent crisis situation during live exports that occurred with young calves in Ireland and with cows at the border post between Bulgaria and Turkey. We will also hear about the United Kingdom's ban on the export of live animals, which raises hopes that the EU will do the same. Live animals are still much requested export goods. Every day they're exported from the EU to non-EU countries for breeding, fattening, or directly for slaughter, by truck, ferry, ship, or even plane. The animals suffer enormously from extremely long transport times and often unacceptable conditions. As soon as they cross the EU's external border, they are at the mercy of their fate, because in the destination countries in Asia, North Africa, or the Middle East, they are usually not protected by law. Before we start with the presentations on the session's main subject, animal transports, I would like to inform you about a piece of good news. I would like to inform you about the ongoing intergroup initiative that we have discussed before, and for which your help is needed, and a few upcoming events. On today's World Kangaroo Day, we will also have a short intervention from two Australian guests who will call for us to stop importing kangaroo products from Australia to the European Union. So we will hear from you in a minute, and I will introduce you. I will tell you that this meeting is live streamed on Interactio. The meeting will be recorded. The video recordings and presentations will be uploaded on the Intergroup website, and we have interpretation in English, French, German, Italian, and Polish. So I'll start with the good news in the announcements here. Last Tuesday, the Romanian parliament voted overwhelmingly in favor of a ban of fur farming in the country. Once the president will have signed off the legislation, Romania will become the 16th EU member state to fully prohibit the breeding, keeping, and killing of animals for the purposes of fur production. So I think that's very good news. That's some very good news. And the law is made in such a way that the 1st of January 2027 is the final phase-out date for the industry. Then I'm also glad to inform you that we're coming closer to the requested number, allowing us to table a proposal for an oral question on the Commission's plan to include the revision of the still outstanding legislative proposals on animal welfare in its work plan for 2025. We have, as you know, a number of legislative proposals that have been promised to us, which have not been delivered, that have been promised to the European citizens from the European Commission, but have not been delivered. Among those are the phasing out of cage farming, legislation on kept animals, legislation on animals at the time of killing, and also animal welfare labeling. So we will ask an oral question about this, and we are close to having the number that we need, the number of signatures, but we still need a few more to make this happen. And I therefore encourage you, dear members, to co-sign the oral question. The online link to confirm your support has been sent to you by the Secretariat and from my office. If you didn't receive it or cannot find it, you can just ask, then we will resend it. Then I would also just inform you or remind you that in the first week of November, I will host an exhibition on the role of the new EU Commissioner for Animal Welfare. and what the role should, which kind of role he should play together with NGO. And I will host this exhibition together with the NGO Gaia, Voice of the Voiceless, and Eurogroup for Animals. The exhibition stand will be on the 3rd floor in the Spinelli building, opposite to the bar, and I warmly invite you to attend the opening Tuesday, the 5th of November, around lunchtime. You will receive an invitation with the details. Then I will tell you that we have drafted a letter which we will send. Maybe it has already been sent, but it will go to Commissioner-designate Oliver Vaheli, the Commissioner-designate for Health and Animal Welfare. We discussed this the last intergroup. It's a letter, and we can send it around to you, where we make explicit the expectations that we have for the Commissioner in front, we do this before he has the hearing in a couple of weeks' time. So he knows what we expect, and I also had the chance to meet with the Commissioner-designate yesterday, where I told him about the intergroup, our work here, and also what we expect from him. Among these are the things that we've discussed on the new legislative proposals, that we want concrete answers to when that is going to be, when will these proposals come, and also concrete info on what is his ideas on making the content of these proposals. So I think we had a constructive discussion. I think with the letter, and he knows about our expectations as far as our discussions have been going on. And we will, of course, see what he will do at the hearing. And I think it will be important for us, and I know that the Eurogroup helps here to make sure that we are present at the hearing, posing questions to him with the focus on animal welfare. Here, all the members who are active in the committees that will participate in his hearing. Well, I know you will be there, and you will ask good questions. Right, the intergroup. I will also announce to you that the intergroup now has 85 members from almost all political groups and from 21 member states. So MEPs who want to join the intergroup can do so by registering on the intergroup's website or by contacting me or the intergroup secretariat. We still get new members signing up for the intergroup, so I think it looks promising. As mentioned before the animal transport discussion, we will start this meeting with a discussion on kangaroo products. We are joined today by a group of guests who have come to Strasbourg to call on the EU to stop the import of kangaroo products. The EU is the biggest importer of Australian kangaroo meat and skins, accounting for 65% of this trade. Their meat is sold in European supermarkets or finds its way into pet food. The skin is used for luxury sports equipment such as shoes. This trade raises major animal welfare concerns, but also sanitary issues. And I have the pleasure now to welcome Peter Hewitt and Ricky Buchanan from Back to Country, BTC, an Aboriginal Australian not-for-profit organization which fights the Australian species, which fights for the Australian species conservation and the preservation of their land. With our two honored guests here, I will invite you to speak about your links to the kangaroos and how the commercial killing and trading with kangaroos products affect your livelihood. For Aboriginal Australians, kangaroos are a totem animal for which they have a deep spiritual connection. So we're very glad to have you here, and I will give you the floor for 5 minutes to tell us your perspective. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peter Hewitt. I'm a Jerringy Yuin man of the south coast of New South Wales. That's approximately 3 hours south of Sydney. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. Thank you, Deputies of the Parliament, and thank you to the audience to hear us as we give voice to Buru, as we call him in my language, or the kangaroo. The kangaroo is an ancient animal. It's lived in that place they call Australia for millions of years. Our people hold the longest living culture in the world. 60,000 plus years we've lived on that continent. We've learnt from that animal how to care for the land, to live from the land and live in harmony. Buru hops softly into the ground. He pushes energy into the earth before he moves. He has the soft feet. We walked the land in that same way. Kangaroo teaches us how to live in a respectful way with the land. With those teachings, we come here to talk about the desecration, the exploitation of that animal. Australia, mainstream Australia, has the highest extinction rate of mammals in the world. Modern Australia doesn't respect its animals. It's our national totem. It's on our flags. It sits on our parliament. Yet they legislate killing of millions of kangaroos every year. 400,000 joeys are left or killed. It's legislated that the most humane way to kill them is to bludgeon their head. The commercial killers of kangaroo either leave those joeys or bludgeon them. We speak about morals, we speak about animal welfare. The damage done to Buru is done to our land, it's done to our people. This is all of our globe. Yes, we've walked that ancient land for a long time, but we all have a responsibility to care for our animals. They've been here for a lot longer than us. We all breathe the same air, drink the same water. We need to care. In my language, we say minga. We need to care for the Mother Earth. Kangaroo is teaching us we need to do this. One way we can care for the land is to stop the importation of kangaroo products. We've come a long way. We've spoken to the Parliament in Rome, Parliament in Netherlands, and parliaments in Belgium. We now come here and ask you to listen with your heart, with your ears, to feel our voice, to feel the voice of kangaroo. Because our elders in Back to Country have given us that responsibility. That spiritual connection is carved on this stick. It's an ancient culture grounded in the natural law. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, audience. My name's Ricky Buchanan. I am Gumbaynggirr, and I come from a place just 5 hours north of Sydney in Australia. Like Peter said, my people have a really strong spiritual connection to kangaroo and have had that connection for many thousands of years. The actions of the people that are out in Australia currently killing these kangaroos are what I would consider vile. These actions they're not in line with any kind of rights that any animal should have, and they are not humane. These animals are living, breathing creatures, And we as Aboriginal people, we have strong connections to this animal, so we are deeply upset when we see what happens to our family, our brothers, our sisters. We treat them like family. And we would like to emphasise that this ban that we are proposing will be the one thing that stops this entire industry. So kangaroo products are only sent to Europe because there is a want for the product. There is not a need, there is a want. People in the world want kangaroo products, and we want to protect kangaroo because of the inhumane treatment. We would like to be able to speak on behalf of our elders and hopefully on behalf of kangaroo to say that this is not a sustainable industry. It needs to stop. And like Peter said, we want you to listen with your heart, because we feel it in our heart that kangaroo needs to be protected before it goes extinct.
Thank you very much, Peter and Ricky, for this statement. I think you will be around, so if any members would like to speak with you, that is, you're most welcome to do that. So thank you very much. And then we will move on to the next topic, as we have a tight agenda, which is the animal transports. So basically, we have different speakers here, because we have had, unfortunately, different crisis situations when it comes to animal transports. Both the situation regarding young calves exported from Ireland, and then we will also hear about stranded pregnant cows from Germany at the Bulgaria-Turkey border. And then lastly, a positive story, the UK journey to ban live exports. But we will start with the treatment of vulnerable young calves exported from Ireland. And our first speaker on animal transports is Caroline Rowley from Ethical Farming Ireland, who has joined us online. She will report about the recent cases of ill treatments of young calves exported from Ireland. So, dear Caroline, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. So 2 weeks ago, our national broadcasting channel, RTE, sorry, is my presentation showing? Oh, there we go. Yeah.
It's
Okay,
showing,
perfect.
yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. 2 weeks ago, our national broadcasting channel, RTE, exposed cruel treatment of unweaned calves at a prominent exporter's premises in Ireland. This followed an expose in 2023 that highlighted abusive treatment of calves as young as 10 days old across several cattle markets. We have conducted a number of investigations into calf export in recent years and have sent many letters of complaint and reports of our findings to the Irish authorities, yet nothing changes. Next slide, please. So just to look at some figures, we're constantly being told that live export is essential, but the figures don't back that up. There are over 2 million calves born every year, 1.5 million from the dairy sector. And just under 2 million cattle are slaughtered every year. So when you put it into perspective, the number of calves exported is actually quite low, only around 10%. And we could absorb these calves into the beef sector, as the majority of them already are. Next slide, please. There are many welfare issues, the main one being the fact that the calves are unweaned, they have an underdeveloped immune system and are fully dependent on milk. They can't be fed during the journey as they have to be unloaded first. Most calves are exported under 4 weeks of age, but they can go to the market at just 10 days old. Our investigations have shown they are there all day with no food. We've often seen pens with no water troughs. The calves are on cold, damp concrete flooring with no bedding. And after being at the market all day, they go to an assembly centre. And we don't actually know if they're fed that evening, and our investigations suggest this may not be the case. This means the calves will already be in a weakened state, which is backed up by the large number of deceased calves discovered at the exporter's premises by RTE. We have seen evidence of calves being dragged by their ears and tails, hit with paddles and sticks, prodded with pitchforks. Calves are difficult to manage and they don't know what's expected of them. Workers become impatient and treat them really roughly. The abuse at the exporter's premises shown by RTE was all in the presence of a Department of Agriculture vet, who must be present for each loading. A Freedom of Information request by RTE showed that a department vet had visited this particular premises 75 times this year. An illegal treatment of calves has been allowed to continue, and this premises is still in operation. Next slide, please. It's a lot for vulnerable animals to go through before embarking on such a long, strenuous journey. After all this stress, the calves are loaded onto a livestock truck, 300 at a time over 3 tiers. It's very crowded, there's barely room to lie down. Many of the calves won't be able to access the water dispensers. Once arriving at the control post in Cherbourg over 24 hours later, the calves are unloaded for rest and feed. As 2,500 can arrive at the same time, it's again total chaos, with desperately hungry calves trying to get to a feeding station. And we've again seen evidence of rough treatment and abuse as the workers try to control them. Some calves have to wait over 8 hours or more to be fed, meaning they will have gone without feed for well over 30 hours, which is unacceptable and in breach of legislation. After a 13-hour rest, the calves are reloaded and they continue their journey. In March, Eyes on Animals trailed a truck that was going from Ireland to Poland, and it stopped at a control post in Belgium where the calves were unloaded to be fed. But they were only given electrolytes. They weren't given milk replacer. Next slide, please. There has been an increase in calf export to Eastern Europe, and our investigations have shown many calves exported to Romania and Hungary end up in Israel. There's also been an increase in dairy bulls exported to Morocco and Israel directly from Ireland. Haifa port is under constant rocket fire, and this must be terrifying for the animals that arrive there, with air raid sirens continuously going off. Almost every sea journey breaches Irish legislation because the vessels hit stormy seas. We have complained to the Irish authorities many times, nothing changes. We have seen evidence of young bulls arriving at Haifa port from Ireland with respiratory illness, severe ringworm, leg injuries, diarrhoea, blindness caused by high levels of ammonia. We've seen documents that show that even in the white flag, purpose-built livestock vessels used by Ireland, temperature and humidity gets higher and higher as the journeys continue, showing the animals on board will have suffered from varying degrees of heat stress. Complaints have been made, but nothing is done. Shockingly, earlier this year, we discovered that 2 trucks of unweaned calves were exported to Libya via Belgium, where they continue the journey by plane. This is absurd and unacceptable. Next slide, please. There are alternatives. Sex semen is already being used to breed better quality beef bulls, but the authorities could do more to encourage more widespread use. There is a dairy calf to beef programme in place, but the dropout rate is high, and again, the authorities could do more to make it more attractive to farmers. Farmers could switch to dual-purpose breeds and have mixed beef and dairy systems. Even calf-at-foot farms could be incentivised. Less animals, higher welfare. At the end of the day, there are 7 million cattle in Ireland, and that's just too many. The weather is getting worse every year, and this pattern will continue. Farmers are facing a fodder crisis this winter, grass isn't growing well, and the winter housing period is being extended. We will not be able to feed all these animals soon. There are also problems with water pollution, and the nitrates derogation is not going to last forever. The herd needs to be cut, there's no way around it. Ireland prides itself on its strict standards that go above and beyond EU legislation. If these are high standards, it is evident that there is no way to export animals humanely, particularly unweaned calves. We are told if calf export was stopped, there would be a welfare crisis, but calf export in itself is a welfare crisis. The evidence is there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. If there are any pressing questions, you're welcome to raise your hand. Otherwise, I would propose that we take the discussion after the 3 presentations. I don't know, Martin, if you want.
No, thank you. Just one brief question in terms of understanding the exports to. Can you be more specific in terms of which countries does it go through? Is it more, the Croatia-Slovenia route, or is it more the Bulgaria-Romania route? Thank you.
Caroline, if you want to
Yeah, sorry.
come in.
Yeah. So so the calves are mostly going to Romania and Hungary, and then they go by ship from Croatia or Romania, and sometimes Slovenia as well. So they go by road to the Eastern European countries, and then it's a sea journey to Israel or wherever. Yeah.
And just a question for me, how long would that be, let's say, to Romania from Ireland?
Oh gosh, I think it's about 4 days. But they would be there for, they're fattened first before they're shipped off to Israel. So they could be there for 6 months or so.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Caroline, for this information. Now we go on to our second case, so to speak, the stranded pregnant cows from Germany at the Bulgaria-Turkey border. Our next speaker is Dr. Patrick Meyer Glitzer from Animal Angels, who is right next to me, and who will speak about this recent case of stranded cows. Dr. Meyer Glitzer, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and that I can present this case here at this floor. Before I start with the presentation, I'd just like to mention that right now there are still, again, animals at the Turkish-Bulgarian border, 49 heifers, pregnant heifers. We just received the news yesterday, they're since Friday, and as we heard, one animal is already dead. So this shows clearly that this is not a singular case, but this is a continuous story. Okay, next slide, please. So how can we visualize the situation? It's all the animals exported from Europe into Turkey. They have to pass the border at Kapitan Andrevo and Capicule. And this is the exit point for the European Union. And after they leave the Bulgarian side, they are in a kind of no man's land. That means they are on the Turkish customs side, but they have really entered Turkey. So you cannot really approach the animals, and they cannot really go back into the European Union. So that's the basic problem. Next slide, please. So there you see a picture of the border, and the red line, the red crossing line, that's the actual border between Turkey and Bulgaria. Next slide, please. So there have been no real improvements since 14 years. Animal Angels and the Animal Welfare Foundation together have been monitoring the border since 14 years. And the authorities have not been able to remedy the welfare problems which are occurring there on this route. Next slide, please. As you know, they have the European Court of Justice ruled that the protection of the animals during transport must be respected through the entire journey, and including the journey leg which is not in the European Union. But this case also shows again that the European authorities have no power to intervene in the non-European Union countries, that communication lines fail, that there's no response, that you don't know if your communication reaches Turkish authorities, that retrospective checks fail due to missing data, and also retrospective checks are not carried out due to lack of staff and time in the European countries. The good Turkish animal protection laws are not implemented, and again, once the animals exit the European Union, their deprived from the protection they are entitled to the European Union and outside of the European Union. Next slide, please. So what causes the delays at the border? There are different reasons, and they change from time to time, and you can never really tell what will happen next. This is missing payments, let's say for inside the border, or if the buyer didn't pay, the lack of preparedness at the border, the mistakes in the health certificates, and wrong indications regarding the weight of the animals. So a lot of paper works that they don't fit in. Then short notice changes in the import requirements. We had this case in the port of Tangier, Morocco, where animals, bulls, stranded for 20 days, and one animal died, and it stayed in the truck for 13 days with the other animals, and it was really very smelly, as a colleague told. Then you have missing, and a lot of other reasons. So when delays occur, no measures are taken to safeguard the welfare and the health of the animals. There's no real procedure or handling how to do this. You always have the same case, and there's nothing really happening. Next slide, please. So last year we had also a case where 41 cattle workers stuck for 1 month at the border, inside the border, and inside the trucks. They didn't even get out of the trucks. And including pregnant heifers, they were designed for Turkey leaving the European Union. Inside this no man's land, they got stranded again. And a few animals, maybe 3 animals, died on the truck. They had limited access to food and water. The health conditions of the animals got worse. And finally, the trucks were released, but they had only 4 hours, the animals, to get a rest outside of the border. And then they were exported to Iraq. So the apparent reason was that the Turkish officials found that the animals did not have the mandatory vaccines to enter Turkish territory. Next slide, please. And now we come to the case, a very recent case at the Bulgarian-Turkish border, which showed once again that there's a failure of the different authorities, the industry, the member states, the European Commission, and the Turkish authorities that didn't work together. We couldn't find a solution for the animals. Next slide, please. So it started on the 12th of September with 4 trucks with pregnant heifers departing from Schönwalde, Brandenburg in Germany to Turkey. But already in August, Brandenburg notified the outbreak of blue tongue virus. But according to the information received, they were tested negative for blue tongue. And the German veterinarian authority had a declaration of consent from Turkey for the import of these animals. It's not totally clear where this declaration of consent came from. Then 4 days later, the 4 transports leave the European Union, and 2 consignments enter Turkey without problems. So 2 can leave the border, and 2 have to stay there, and it's not clear why this happens. And 2 consignments are detained at the Turkish customs territory called no man's land, like I explained before. And there are 2 transporters, one with 34 and one with 35 highly pregnant heifers. The destination is Turkey, Konya, and Dulkadiroglu, if I pronounce it right. Next slide, please. So here you see the whole journey leg, and it's this is the hours you see there. It's 43 hours. That's driving time without any rest, or also for the drivers. That's the one consignment, and the other consignment. Next slide, please. That's already 50 hours only driving time.
39 hours.
But that's for car, and the 15 hours are for the truck.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Then 1 week later, or some weeks later, on the 23rd of September, the German authorities received the information that 39 German Hafers are detained inside the border. And this is not an official communication or information by the organizer of the transport, but by a worried transport company, which is not involved in the case. The animals are, for some days, they are unloaded and stay in the stable inside the border between the 16th September and 2nd of October. Rumors state that, that they were too smelly and attract too many flies, and therefore the animals are banned again onto the truck. But there's no real reason we know that this happened, so why they had to get up on the truck again. While they're unloaded, one heifer gives birth, but the calf disappears. We don't know where it is, where it's stranded. And the German Federal Office of Consumer Protection and Food Safety, they reach out to the European Commission, to the Turkish veterinary colleagues, to the Bulgarian veterinary colleagues, to VOA as a mediator. Nothing happens. So there's no reach through to the Turkish authorities that this can be remedied, that they are unloaded again, that if they have to wait so long, that the least can be done for the animals, that they can stay outside of the truck. Next slide, please.
Not so much time.
Yeah, okay. So on the 9th of October, the German CVO sends a letter to the Turkish CVO, and again, a few days later, but no reply. Then around the 11th, a newborn calf on the Polish truck and one dead heifer on the truck are spotted. And the authorities in Brandenburg issue an order to the transporter and the organizer to kill by euthanasia. But nothing happens because it was on the 13th, it's ended this notification, this deadline, but didn't happen until then. Next slide, please. So there you can see inside the truck what happens to the animals. Next slide, please. So then on the 14th of October, the trucks leave the no man's land heading to the slaughterhouse near Edin. It's 25 kilometers away from the customs, accompanied by police and customs. They are unloaded until 8 o'clock in the evening at the slaughterhouse. There they are unloaded. Yeah, the animals have difficulties leaving the trucks because there are lots of dead animals in between. 13 dead calves, 7 dead heifers, and 2 downers dragged out of the truck by chains, left unassisted. There's even one alive calf near the downers, probably born by one of them, of it. When we leave there, the 2 downers are not killed, emergency killed, still not. And the trucks have to go back to the no man's zone, with the dead animals on board. And we later find out, next slide please, that there's one heifer still on the board, which apparently maybe not have be able to pull out because it was so stuck into this mud and yeah, excrements that they had difficulties getting it out. The next day, the operator of the slaughterhouse said that all animals are slaughtered without stunning. That means that the calves inside suffocate. The idea was to euthanize them with a placenta effective remedy, euthanizing. Then, like I said, our team approached the customs area and still heard one downer inside the truck. vocalizing. All attempts to have it killed fail. You don't reach through not the vets, no way. Then at 3 o'clock they reach the garbage dump, with full of plastic, where they are dragged out. And there's still one animal, Hope, we called her, and which they wanted to drag out, but the police stops this and said they don't want to do this. And so with the captive bolt, it's finally killed and alleviated of the suffering. So she was there all the time, all the night, alone in between all the dead animals. Next slide, please. Yeah, conclusions. Nearly all the parties involved in this case, they have responsibility, and they failed to do anything, was not able to reach through. And it shows, again, the endless and extreme suffering of the animals and the inability of the European Union as member states to influence what happens on the Turkish territory. Even through BOA and all NGOs, there was nothing we could do. And the German authorities failed to go through to convince the Turkish authorities to unload the animals in the stable until there was a solution found. So at least the lease couldn't be done. Next slide, please. Like I said again. And this is a fact since 2010 that we know about it, that this happens at the border. And Animal Angels and the Animal Welfare Foundation, we were there together at the border, have sent numerous European complaints, and also an FVO commission in 2017 concluded at this border is a high risk for animal suffering. So it's a clear solution to this, that we must prohibit this export trade, knowing full well, very full, that in every single transport to Turkey there's a serious and unavoidable risk that the animals will be subject to enormous additional suffering. Next slide, please. We have this precautionary principle in the transport regulation, Article 3, that no person shall transport animals or cause animals to be transported in a way likely to cause injury or undue suffering to them. The competent authorities are entitled and obliged to prohibit a transport if there's a risk that injury, pain, or unnecessary suffering could be caused to the animals or a part of them, and if it is not possible to avert this risk with a high probability by taking certain measures.
How many more do you have?
Just 1, 2. Okay. Next slide, please. So we like to thank the Turkish NGOs and especially our translator who helped us there at the border. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we hope that the death of these animals maybe has some meaning in it, at least, and that this was not in vain. So we should stop the export to third countries because we don't know what happens. We have no way to influence what happens behind the border, and especially in this no man's land. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this strong story, which is unfortunately not fiction, but what happens real life right now. We have one question from Anja, and then from Martin, and then from Tilly, and then from Rachel. But actually, if we need to make it pretty short because we also have one last intervention on the UK ban on live exports. But perhaps if you can make it short, each of you. Anja, yeah, I'm sorry about that, but yeah.
I'm still crying. Sorry. Caroline.
Even the transporters, they were crying.
Hmm? Yeah, it is so sad. And unfortunately, I was in Capicule. We saw, Tilly and I saw this German heifer on the Turkish side. just have been there for 4 months, and this is so unacceptable. I want to thank Caroline. I want to thank all of you for the great work you do. But Caroline, good to see you again. I was with you in Ireland, and I've been to Cherbourg and followed the trucks until the Netherlands and Belgium. Every time you write a report, you hear from the industry that they are surprised that it's an incident, and I would like to hear from you. What is your message to the industry when they act so surprised? Well, we know that this goes on for decades already. And to Animals Angels, we here working on the ANIT report that we should have a wide list of countries that are safe to export. What is your message to them?
Thank you, and yeah, thank you for all the work. Really important. And remembering actually the ANID mission to the border, it was, we were only on the Bulgarian side, which I think was part of a mistake, and it was a bit of, as we say, Potemkin's village. So there were no trucks that day. But clearly, there is a problem. Seems to be, and I wonder what you say in terms of how the situation is on the Bulgarian side versus the Turkish side. Whether there is any mechanisms for a truck that gets stranded to return to Bulgaria, and what's the collaboration from the Bulgarian authorities, because that could be one of the ways to help to prevent such a things. In terms of the white list, for me, this is third countries and third countries. Switzerland is a third country. For us, transport from eastern Slovakia to Uzhgorod in Ukraine is a third country, and that would be legal, while transport to western Germany, where there is the large-scale slaughterhouse, is something which is fine. And I think this is where we really need to look at overall length, but also how we can ensure the conditions are fine, and how we can ensure that there is a checks and on the control. What would you, but the core question is here, what would you say? We have upcoming hearings of the Commissioner. Also in the previous report, Hungary is clearly one of the culprits. Sadly, I think the Eurogroup for Animals still don't have a member from Hungary. And the Commissioner in charge of Animal Welfare will be from Hungary. So what would be the recommendations for the hearing of the designated Commissioner Varhelyi on this particular topic, given that we have this also now in the Parliament on the agenda? So, and last but not least, what is the recommendations towards, or kind of your take on where to improve the proposal that we have on the table on animal transport? Thank you.
Yes, I will just use my time to make a call to my colleagues from the other parties, the other political groups. I only had yesterday, I will of course not name anybody, an MEP, a member of the European Parliament, who was just saying me, but there are no issues. What you were talking about, that's 20 years ago. No, it's just ongoing 20 years ago. There is no change right now. So my call would really be, let's make a new regulation that is better enforced, a clearer rule. Let's ban these exports of live animals, particularly in direction of Turkey. I mean also this long transport. We have to have better rules, better controls, better monitoring. I'm still wondering how this is possible. So my call is really to my colleagues, please let's start working. We don't need any other proofs or any other that we need to change something. Of course we do it together with the actors, with the different stakeholders. But voilà, I just wanted to make a call. Let's start working. The citizens are waiting for us to work. The Commission proposal is nearly 1 year old now in December. We owe it to the citizens, but most of all, we owe it also to the millions of animals suffering, and with the animals also a lot of humans, as we see also today. Thank you.
Thank you for that call, Tilly. And then Raquel, you had marked.
Yes, thank you so much for all your work and your presentations. It's really mind-blowing in a very negative sense that this is still happening. And I'm looking for ways to make our role as effective as possible. And I see in the travel routes that you obviously have to cross through a lot of European countries to get to the border with a third country. And I was wondering if and also for my colleagues here who have been working on this for a very long time, if we can, what's more effective to start with limiting the hours for limiting transport of live animals within the European Union to much shorter periods of time, which makes it impossible to export by road to those countries? Or is that totally unrealistic? Or is the export to third countries the biggest problem?
Okay, Raquel, that's a very good question. That's a general question. I think this developed into a very relevant debate on transports in general. We have a problem because we don't have a lot of time left. And so I would propose to you that we get a short intervention from Sue Witherhead on the UK ban of export of live animals. It will be just 4 or 5 minutes, and then we will get a couple of answers afterwards to these very relevant questions we have from members. I'm sorry that the time is like it is, but anyway, Sue, I will give you the floor now. If you have 4 or 5 minutes, I'm sorry that it's not longer, but I think you need to come in now.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. First slide, next slide, please. So the live export trade from the UK for animals going for slaughter it was a long established trade, and at one time it was very significant. A couple of million animals. It declined substantially over the last 50 years, and there are a variety of reasons for that, but I won't go into those today. But over that period, various governments were clear that they would prefer animals to be slaughtered close to where they were reared due to the animal welfare risks which increased with journey time. But obviously it was a legitimate trade. So next slide, please. There was significant public and parliamentary concern over these long journeys to slaughter, as we've kind of heard today, and that led to a reduction in the routes that were available for the slaughter trade, and in turn this led in effect to actually increasing journey time, so it became about 18 hours as a minimum from Britain to Europe. And as we heard in another presentation, calves in particular tended to go on long journeys. I mean, okay, they had rest breaks, but even so, there were 60 plus hours to get from Britain to Spain, which is where a lot of them were going for fattening. So ministers were keen that they understood the evidence base around this. So first of all, we did a call for evidence where we saw evidence from a range of stakeholders, and one of the things that came out of that, there was strong support for ending live exports for slaughter, as well as, and many also argued for ending live exports for fattening as well as slaughter. So we then commissioned some scientific research or a systematic review from the University of Edinburgh and the Scottish Rural College, and that's a published report. And then we also sought advice from our expert committee on farm animal welfare. And their report identified several aspects of transport that have a detrimental effect, and basically recommended that animals should only be transported when necessary, and that journey durations should be minimised. And they highlighted the fact that animals were passing several abattoirs in the UK to be slaughtered overseas, and that led to potential stress in the final stages of life. So next slide, please. So following the scientific advice and the other work that had been done, the government decided to consult on improving animal welfare by ending excessively long journeys for slaughter and fattening. A significant number of respondents to that consultation supported a ban on, in effect, live exports for fattening and slaughter. Animal welfare organisations, as you expect, obviously supported that ban. Farming unions, some livestock associations were against the ban, were particularly concerned about the impact on the farming sector. So we had our economists look into this, we had to do an impact assessment, and this actually showed the direct cost to business was not as, well, it was £5.2 million over 10 years, which is less than £500,000 per year. So in effect, the economic impact on the sector was not great at all. Next slide, please. So following considerations of responsive consultation, the stress and exhaustion that these animals experience, the government and actually the overall economic cost, the government introduced a bill in Parliament this time last year, and in summer this year, the Animal Welfare Livestock Exports Act 2024 passed into law, and that bans the export of livestock and horses from Great Britain for slaughter and fattening. Next slide, please. So what the Act does, it makes it an offence to export livestock and horses for slaughter and fattening. It applies to cattle, other bovines, it applies to horses and other equines, it applies to sheep, goats, pigs and farmed wild boar. It does not ban exports for live exports for other purposes such as breeding or shows, competitions, racing, etc. So it's when we talk about a ban on live exports, it is those live exports for slaughter and fattening, not for breeding. And it doesn't ban poultry exports either, because there'd never been any poultry export trade for slaughter, so that then they weren't in scope of the ban. Next slide, please. So as I say, it's now an offence to export animals for slaughter, and to ensure the ban is effectively enforced, we are now looking to introduce regulations which provide for additional pre-export controls. We're providing powers for inspectors to hold animals which they suspect are destined for slaughter, and ideally these measures will prevent anyone trying to get round the ban whilst not hindering legitimate trade, such as livestock going for breeding. Next slide, please. So we're building on the controls that are in, we've assimilated the EU regulation 1/2005 on protection of animals in transport. So we're building on the controls in that regulation, in particular the journey log provisions for livestock. So since July, a transporter has had to make a declaration that livestock are not going for slaughter, and the new regulations will require the submission of evidence of the purpose of the journey when they apply for their journey log to be approved by the competent authority. Next slide, please.
Sue, we're running out of time, so if you could wrap up.
My penultimate slide. I've got two, so I'll be very
Great.
quick. So just on horses, they're not subject to journey log. Registered horses aren't subject to journey log controls under 1/2005. So we're going to have to. We're working with the horse sector to try and design regulations that will prevent horses going for slaughter whilst not impacting on legitimate movement of horses. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we've banned live exports for slaughter. That came into force on the 22nd of July. Regulations to provide additional pre-export controls are before our Parliament at the moment, and we'd expect them to come into force on the 1st of January. And we'll continue to work with stakeholders on this. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you very much, Sue. All right, friends, I think the interpreters will leave us in a minute, and we have passed 11 o'clock, so I will try to improve the time management from my side in the future. I think those who have time, maybe we would just hear from you, Dr. Maja Glitzer, on some of the questions. If you do have time, then you're welcome to stick around. Thank you.
Regarding the whitelist, or after countries, I mean, and Switzerland, I mean, if they can prove the implementation, yeah, sure. But other countries, I don't know. I think it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And if I understood you right, at the Bulgarian border, well, on the Bulgarian border, you have a 24-hour veterinary services, and the Turkish border not. So this means that there's this 6 hours. Half of the trucks have to wait 6 and more hours, even 3 days, a few percentages. And the Bulgarians, they didn't want to have these 2 trucks back, or even have it not transported through Bulgaria back to Germany. And also not, if I remember right, the Commission wanted to have the animals euthanized on the Bulgarian side of the border. They didn't want this. So there clearly are difficulties in communication or into implementing and finding a solution together. There's no way how to do this. And so everybody is trying to struggling, but there's no common way. And the recommendations, I mean, this is for the new regulation. Well, there are different things. I mean, once you have the time of transport, obviously. I mean, not that it should be shortened, not only for slaughter animals. Then the export ban in third countries, limited temperatures. And also that for the sea travel, that you don't have this as a resting time. I mean, these are days, weeks, so this is not a resting time. And that's the space. I mean, it's a little bit improved, but it should be more improved, the space allowances. So these are just a few. But we have written a report, so if you're interested, you can get the report more detailed.
Just, if I may, on the short term, because now I received the message of the truck that is stuck again in the no man's land. And what can we do? What do you think what we can do now on the new situation that is happening right now as we are sitting here?
Well, the very first is, I mean, that they get unloaded. That's the very least, so that they don't have to stay on the truck. They don't have to stay in. I mean, the manure was up. And that the calves are born into this manure, and I mean, they cannot really, how can they survive there? So that's the very least. And we were told, we met a lawyer in Istanbul a day after the animals went to the garbage dump, the dead animals. And he told us that we should, that the German consulate in Istanbul would be a good way to approach. That's maybe one way, that they have connections. And I mean, yeah, that the animals should be allowed to go back. So the Bulgarian side should be approached, and that they let the animals go back. And yeah, in general, we need to find a solution for this no man's land. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Look, we are starting the negotiations on the new regulation, and we have with us one of the main negotiators. So we need to join forces to change things here. And now we have actually the opportunity for the first time in 20 years. I remember campaigning with Animals Angels, I told you, 12 years ago when we wanted a new legislation for animal transport, and we didn't succeed. We collected 1 million signatures together. We didn't make the Commission come with a proposal, but now we have a proposal. Now they have come with a proposal, and we need to use this chance. It will be difficult in this Parliament, but we need to do all that we can. So I'm glad we had this discussion, and I'm sure we will follow up in the coming time. Thank you very much for all the presentations, to all the presenters, and thank you for the discussion, and we'll stay in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. I only want to repeat my little invitation. Please note all in your calendars the 17th of November from 8 to 10, breakfast evening concerning the decline of hedgehogs. Thank you very much.